Hi, all right. The final chapter, we're gonna be doing what managing communication. This is so we covering 12 chapters, so that's good enough. All right, let's go. Let's start. All right. So managing communication, chapter 15. The outcomes are what to explain the role that perception plays in communication and communication problems. All right. Describe the communication process and the various kinds of communication in organizations. Explain how managers can manage effective one-on-one communication. Describe how managers can manage effective organization-wide um, communication. So, we all know what a job of the manager is, right? But, most of the time, managers spend is being researched and it's been ascertained. It's a fact that managers would spend about 70% or 75% of their time what communicating, getting information and passing the information on to people. All right, whether the employees or what the stakeholders or the customers, who are part of the stakeholders, the shareholders, and everything. So communication is very important. Otherwise, as human beings, generally, if we don't communicate, what happens? Um, Nothing really is gonna get done. Some of the greatest communicators in the world are also what greatest leaders, right? So they have to tell you what is going on. They have to communicate to be able to inspire you, to be able to tell you what the organizational goals, right? To be able to um, tell you, what is expected of you, and you also what communicate back, right? So what is communication? The process of transmitting information and receiving information from one person to the other. All right, so the process of what transmitting and receiving information from one person to the other. The information process is made up of what so many steps. First of all, the two most important factors in the communication process is what the communicator and the communicatee. The communicatee, all right? The communicator, the person who's sending the information, and the person who's receiving the information is also called what the communicatee, right? And so, or you can also say, the sender. Yes, of course, I've said it. The sender and the receiver. All right. So the process starts with a sender. The sender thinks about what information, what message they want to send. All right, and then they what encode it. All right, so they make it what understandable for the person who is going to be receiving the message to what information, right? And then what happens? They transmit the information. How are you going to transmit the information? By email, by what? By face to face, by what? Zoom, whatever the medium is, or the media is. That is how you transmit the information. All right, and then what happens? Then the receiver receives the information, right? The receiver decodes the information. That means they're trying to understand what you have sent. All right, and then after they decode it and they understand it, what happens? They give you a feedback. All right, so that is what the communication process. The purpose of communication, of course, is to share information. All right, the communication is what makes us tick, what makes us click, what makes us what understand each other. Otherwise, even people who do not hear what they use, what sign language, right? The communication is very important. If without communication, we find it difficult to understand each other. All right, why we did that, what we know, what we're gonna do, and stuff like that. The problems that, but there are problems or obstacles in communication, right? Number one is our perception. Our perception is an obstacle. All right. Number two is our self-perception. So two perceptions here. Number one is just our perception. And you can also say, our perception filters. So that's number one. And number two is our self-perception. Then number three is noise. Noise. All right. So noise is a problem or is an obstacle, right? In communication, let's see. So what is perception? Perception is the way we understand things, all right? The way we see things, our understanding of it, and the way we interpret things, all right? So this, could be an obstacle, all right, in communication. Because the way I see it, the way I understand it is not the same way that you understand it, right? This is what happens most of the time when you teach in class, right? Some people understand it differently. Some people don't understand it. Some people understand it very well. This accounts for what? Partly it accounts for your grades, all right? When, you give a message to somebody to send to, like two people, they're gonna not say the same thing when they are sending the message to somebody else, right? This is perception. We all have different perception filters. Our perception filters is based on what, on our personality and our experiences. All right. If you are this tolerant person, or open person, you tend to be receptive to to a lot of messages, to a lot of information. But if you're not, you are sort of a kind of person who just don't want to communicate, don't want to entertain anybody else's thoughts, or even if you are an introvert or an extrovert, we all have different perception filters that we use to ignore certain parts of the messages, right? And accept certain parts of it. So this is based on on our experience and also our personality. And personality is a psychological factor. So you have to understand that if you are talking about ice to somebody who lives in Greenland or somewhere, they probably wouldn't listen to a lot of what you're saying because they know a whole lot of about ice, right? And stuff like that. Or on the other hand, they could be very interested. All right, but of course you can't sell ice to an Eskimo, right? So whatever you start saying, hey, this ice is gonna make you do this. This ice is very good for this. Rapidly, they're gonna tune you out based on their experience. All right, based on their experience. All right. So in our environment too, we tend to notice certain things, right? Based on our values and our beliefs and our expectations and our interests and stuff, right? When I'm riding with my wife, she sees certain things that I don't really care for, and I see things that she doesn't really care much about. All right, she normally sees stuff like shopping centers. I don't see no shopping center. I just passed by a shopping center, but I didn't see it. All right, I saw something else. I saw a nice car. Yeah. So and I saw a nice restaurant. All right. So what we do, I mean, how we describe this is called is selective, what you call it, perception. That is noticing certain things in your environment based on your values. I can go to a place and all I'm looking at is the basketball arena or the sports programs that they have, right? Do they play football around here? Oh, this is a nice football field. But then when I'm driving again with my wife, she don't even see no football field. She don't take that into consideration at all. She's probably looking at somebody's dress. Oh, this woman got her hair done this way. So we tend to have what? Selective perception. All right. Now there's another thing about perception that we call closure. Closure, right? If um somebody gives you an information, right? We tend to fill in certain gaps in what we think is missing or what is actually missing in the information, right? So that is called closure. The how we fill in those gaps, what we put in. So I'm telling you that okay, we're gonna cut the company budget by what? By 10%. All right. A lot of people are gonna say, okay, they're gonna fill in the gap. That means that they're gonna say, you know, they're gonna cut jobs. The boss said, oh, he's gonna cut jobs by 10%. Is that really what the boss said? He said he was gonna cut budget, right? Or they might say, oh, we're gonna our paycheck is gonna be cut. He didn't say that, right? But we tend to put in certain things, right? And this happens all the time. This is also an obstacle. So these are obstacles to what communication. Again, on perception, how we perceive others also comes into play, right? We have what we call the attribution theory, where we, which says that we try to explain and understand the reason why people engage in certain activities or the reason why people behave a certain way. All right. Why is he out there jumping around so happy? I'm just gonna think of it. I mean, he probably won the lottery. All right. He probably graduated. He probably graduated from from the university. Um, I mean, he probably got a new baby, something, right? Why is he so sad? So he's looking like that. What is going on? I don't know. He probably hungry. He probably got fired, right? I mean, he probably lost somebody, right? So this is what we call what the attribution theory, the way we um, perceive others. We try to explain what others are doing. All right. So according to the attribution theory, we use two general what we call reasons. And number one is we have what an internal attribution where and external attribution. So number one is internal attribution, and number two is external attribution, right? Where we try to find a reason for the way that somebody behaves a certain way. So with internal, we sort of explain it that is the person's the person is to be blamed. All right. It was under whatever situation it is under the control or was under the control of the person. So in broad daylight, you driving down the street and there is an accident. We tend to blame the people who are engaged in an accident. Whoever hit who. If I don't see it, I'm just blaming one person, probably a bad driver. I'm not gonna blame it on maybe the slippery road, right? or maybe there was a bump in the road, a pothole in the road, something, right? So I'm doing what? Internal attribution. And also what? External attribution, where you blame it on what? External factors, right? All right, let's see. All right, so under external attribution, we commit what we call, yes, we commit some errors, all right? Some errors. So we shouldn't be, attributing things, or we shouldn't be, reasoning on that level like that. So we commit what we call defensive bias, all right? So with defensive bias, we tend to put ourselves in the person's shoes. You say that, oh, okay, listen, the person, what you call it, was is trying to fix their tire, right? They had a flat tire, they're trying to fix it. So who do I blame it on? I blame it on external factors. So I blame it solely on external factors, right? That it could be what? A nail on the street, and whatever the person is going through can easily happen to me, right? Somebody falls off a ladder, trying to fix the roof, and say, "Ooh, wow," it's not the person's fault. It's just that the roof is so high, so you have the tendency to fall, right? So you do what we call defensive bias, right? All right, but then with internal attribution, we can also commit what we call fundamental attribution error, right? Where we blame or we put the blame solely on the individual, right? Now, this thing happened when I was working in a manufacturing company called Bose, right? Now, this guy, he drives a forklift, right? He drives it very fast and stuff. And there was a time, so he got in an accident. He hit, the wall caved in and stuff. And the manager, they blame it on him. They said it's because he was driving too fast. They had him go do some tests to find out if he was drunk, because he always looked, sort of red-eyed and stuff, But he was my friend, so I know, he wasn't drinking and stuff. But then what did the manager do? They blame it solely on this guy. So they committed what? The fundamental attribution error. All right. As the story goes, it turned out he had complained about the forklift brakes for some time, right? The brakes were totally worn out and they didn't fix it. So there was, so this buttresses the point that the manager didn't look anyway, but just blame the person. All right. For the most part, employees use what this they commit defensive bias, all right, where they just blame it on external factors, and then managers commit internal or fundamental attribution error when they blame it on only internal factors. All right, so the next obstacle, the next problem with communication is self-perception. Self-perception, the way we view ourselves. People view, of course, there is nothing wrong with viewing yourself like highly, but sometimes we view ourselves too highly. All right, we become so arrogant, we become so pompous, like, okay, we know already what we're doing, nobody can tell us anything. And so when a manager calls you and tries to tell you your problem, you become sort of emotional about it, right? That, okay, you've been doing so many things right, and but they're calling you to blame you, or you become so defensive that, okay, this is not you. This is not what you do. You better than that, right? So these things sort of create a communication obstacle, all right? We tend to deny our faults. We tend to deny, to not, take listen to whatever is being told of us, right? By our boss. Some people just tune you out, right? And this has happened to me before. So I called a student in trying to find out, hey, why are your grades so bad? And all of a sudden, she starts crying, and then she just zooms out of my office, just walks out of my office. I was like, hey, what is going on here? See? So what is going on? Self-perception. They're thinking highly of themselves that, okay, you cannot tell them whatever their mistakes are and try to reason with them. All right? All right, so the third obstacle is noise. Noise is anything that interferes with communication, with the transmitting and receiving of communication. So I'm talking to you now, and I hear the fire truck, and so this is interfering with you hearing or listening, or even with me talking, right? Another noise is that I did not the sender of the message did not encode the message very well, right? And encoding is what I'm trying to make people understand what you're writing or what you're saying, right? So if you don't encode it well, according to your audience, according to the person who's going to receive it, then it becomes some sort of noise. It's not clear what you're saying. Nobody can understand you. On the other hand, another noise is on the receiver side. If the receiver is not able to decode the message very well, maybe they don't have that level of cognition to understand it, right? Or maybe they just weren't listening very well, or maybe they just can't read very well, right? So it becomes noise, because that by itself is what? Interfering with the communication process, right? All right, another one is what? Jargons. Jargons. Every discipline has its own jargon, all right? In economics, we have what we call GDP. We have what we call GNP, gross national product. We have what we call opportunity cost, right? So if I'm writing these things in an economic message to somebody who doesn't understand it, it's noise to the person. What you're saying is noise to my ear. I don't understand you. When I go to the hospital, they use certain words. EKG. I didn't understand what EKG is. All I know is that go get an X-ray, right? And then they said, edema. What is what is that? Is it? Yeah. Is it It means what? Swelling. Is it edema? There's something like that. All right. So cardiovascular diseases and stuff like that. We tend to try to understand. The one thing too that I didn't understand clearly was RX. They wrote RX there on a sheet of paper. What is this RX? It means prescription, right? So they have certain jargons that they use in their profession. And so if you don't understand the jargon, you don't know what it is, it becomes noise to you. It's noise. All right. And also like I said, emotional outburst. All right. When somebody is just crying or talking so loud or so softly or pounding the table, the desk, anything, yelling that could interfere with the communication process. So that is what? Noise. All right, let's go to the structure of communication. All right, the structure, how the communication is arranged. When we say structure, we mean how things are arranged. Is it in hierarchy, right? Vertical, or is it horizontal? So for the most part, in organizations, we have what? The formal communication, right? Formal communication, which is what is the authorized communication. Mostly it comes from the top and then is passed on to the bottom. So it's what? Downward communication. And then the communication that comes from the bottom to the top is what? Upward communication. And most of the time, it's in the form of grievances, right? Or it's in the form of feedback. Yes, I understand the message, and we're gonna act on it, right? You are the worker, and the CEO is the one who's gonna give you what those instructions and stuff. All right. So we have what? Formal communication structure, and then we also have and then with a formal communication structure, it could also be horizontal, where managers are talking to each other, right? Peer level communication. All right. We also have informal communication, which is also called what? The grapevine communication, right? Mostly gossip, hearsay, rumors, right? Those are actually very effective way of communication, right? You hear a whole lot from those things. And trust me, about 90% of them are true, okay? Because for the most part, the bosses, the CEOs and stuff, they are gonna not give you the right information for try to cover, maybe for personal reasons or for defamation purposes, right? So they just don't divulge those informations. Yeah. All right. So that is the structure, and most of the time with grapevine is what is mostly also horizontal. All right. So we have different forms of communication. We have coaching. Coaching is when they are the manager is communicating with you in order for you to improve your job performance. Then you also have what? Counseling. Counseling is of course, they talk to you, right? You to be able to what? Find out what is going on a personal level, which is affecting your job. So it's not directly your job performance, but they know that, okay, maybe you're having a marriage problem, maybe your parent is sick, maybe your child is sick, right? Maybe you having what some medical conditions, and so they try to communicate with you on that level. That is called what? Counseling, most of the time. And we also have another form of communication where instructions are given, then feedback, which is also another, and then suggestions is another form of communication, and then what? You're communicating to solve a problem. So solution type of form of communication. There are two types of communication. We have the verbal communication and the non-verbal communication. The verbal communication is where you use what? Words, all right? It's either you saying the words orally or you writing the words down, right? With non-verbal communication, you don't use any words. You use what? Gestures, right? Gesturing, or use symbols, all right? When I was coming to what? Here, what did I see? I saw the buffalo sign, right? The statue of the buffalo. out there. And I thought to myself, ooh, so this is sending me a message about the people of Sisseton, right? That okay, they are what they are like the buffalo. They are brave, bold, right? Basically they're warriors, all right? And when I got there, I looked at the library. I saw those symbols. Well, first of all, saw the symbols on top of the buildings, and then when you look at the library, you see the bird flying, and then the herd of is it cows or buffaloes, right? So we communicate with what? Symbols. All right. Some people design all kind of symbols that you can use as what necklace. When you go to their houses or their offices, you see so many symbols, right? Which tells you what they are about, what they believe in, their values and everything. Yep, their set of beliefs, and also how they behave, right? All right, and so the other one that I said is gestures, right? There are two types of gestures. We have the kinesics, and then we have what the paralanguage. All right, kinesics come from Greek word which means movement. So that with that, it's either you making hand movement, body language, and also you are making what facial expressions. All right. Um, gestures alone, they said, contributes a lot to the communication process. People, as soon as you walk in, they're looking at your facial expression. They're looking at your gestures. Now, what I don't like is when you're talking to somebody and the person don't look you in the eye. Most of these kids around, they just be on the phone. Yeah, right? What is going on? That is no way to communicate. You have to look me in the eye, and what you call it. Sometimes not, or say yeah, you know, that is the respectful way of doing things. But of course, I mean that is in America. In China, you don't have to look people in the eye. They see that as what disrespectful. So you kind of bow your head. Yep. Yep, yep. When a boss is talking to you, when somebody um, is talking to you, also what kind of gestures do people make? They fold their arms, right? Or they smile, or like I said, they nod, or they shake their head. You know, um, yeah. There's one student who Terrence, right? Terrence is a very um, uses whole lot of kinesics, but I'm gonna tell you what you know what I really like about communicating with Terrence. All right, so apart from kinetics, we also have what paralanguage, right? Which is also not which is a what non-verbal form of communication where um, it is dependent on the tone of your voice or the pitch of your voice or the volume of your voice or the pauses in between what you are saying. Most of the time, when you're speaking so fast, right, people think that you are nervous or they attribute it to what? Nervousness, right? When he's speaking so slowly, maybe they think that okay, you don't know what you're saying. All right, somewhere in between is considered good, and somehow people also may think that okay, you are being so thoughtful. If you listen to former President Obama speak, right, he speaks sort of intermittently, right? He goes, well, you I spoke to the Russian leader. and stuff like that. So what is he trying to do? That is more what thoughtful kind of speaking. You got to weigh every word because as a leader, everybody's looking at you, right? So every word is important. Sometimes in the classroom or in the classroom when we are teaching, when I'm teaching, every word that comes out of my mouth is very important because somebody's writing it down. It's going into somebody's head, so that is what they're going to produce for you, right? So you have to be able to watch your words carefully. All right. So listening is also what constitutes what the 50% part of what communication. It's not just talking or it's just not sending. It's what receiving. So receiving can be in the form of listening or when it's oral. And so what is listening? Making a conscious effort to understand what is being said, right? That is what listening is. So basically, people view it as using your brain to decipher what is going on, to understand what is going on, which is quite different from hearing. Hearing is just using your ear, to perceive what is going on. Okay, I hear it, but doesn't mean anything to me, right? There's no meaning to it. I hear noise coming from the guitar. That's what I hear. It doesn't really mean anything to me. I hear some kids crying, yelling, and screaming. I don't really understand what they are saying. If I was listening, then I would understand exactly what they are saying. But I just hear it. It's like I don't make anything out of it, but I can perceive that it's a child talking. It's children talking, or it's an adult talking, or it's a music that is being played, right? Funk music, reggae music. I can tell. That is the difference between hearing and listening. So listening is the 50% part of communication. To be a good leader, you have to know how to listen. All right. So how can you improve your listening? By being an active listener and also by being an empathetic listener. So by being an active listener, you give the communicator or the person giving you the sender of the message your rapt attention, your full attention. So that means what? You are actually taking part in the communication. You're taking what? Responsibility. You're taking 50% of the responsibility in the communication process just by you sitting down and being very active. All right, being an active listener. How do you become an active listener? Like I said, somebody like Terrence, he looks at you. He nods. He goes. Sometimes he smiles. He goes, "Oh, yeah, okay." So you know that he is listening. He's as soon as you ask a question, he answers it. Yes, no, maybe, I don't really know. He contributes. He tells me he's a very active listener. Some students just sit, with a bland face. You don't know any expression on their face, whether they understand it. When you ask them a question, no response sometimes, right? They're not active listeners. You don't fool nobody. You're just not an active listener. So an empathetic listener is somebody who puts themselves in your shoes. They know where you are coming from. They empathize with with whatever you are saying, right? You telling me about events that have happened in your life, right? You are in New Mexico, and something happens to you, happened to you, and I'm listening. Oh wow, I feel so sorry about that. Gosh, right? You are an empathetic listener. You putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. You understanding the speaker's perspective. Their frame of reference. Where they are actually coming from. So when you listen, what do? You give feedback. There are two types of feedback: constructive and destructive. All right. Constructive feedback is the kind of information that you give to the sender, back to the sender, as a form of to help the person out. All right, to more or less encourage them. To correct certain things. All right, about what they said. But then this destructive feedback is where actually you just criticize and not necessarily try to offer any help or any encouragement, right? Um, and you make the person feel negative about the kind of message that they gave to you. All right, now we have certain situations in our organizations, right? Certain um, situations that define or that brings up certain communication situations or certain scenarios. Number one is organizational silence, all right, where people are scared to speak. They don't want it. There is a you know they're scared that if they say anything, then they're gonna face what negative consequences, right? They're gonna be fired or they're gonna be in trouble. So some organizations have that culture, a culture of just silence, right? Organizational silence, code of silence is what I call it. Code of silence. If you're into movies, you're gonna. I think Chuck Norris' movie is called Code of Silence, where nobody want to speak up. Everybody's scared to speak up. Everybody, they keep to themselves. I don't know. Don't say that. Because maybe you have bad leadership, right? That's when you have bad leadership. There's also the bystander effect, where people see what is going on, something wrong, there's a problem, but they don't, take the responsibility to fix it. That is the bystander effect. How do you stop that? Sometimes then, you have to encourage people that, hey, if you speak up, if you actually do something when you see a problem, you're going to get a reward for it. All right. So, how do you improve what? Communication, you know, on the whole, how do you improve your communication? So when you're communicating, you have to be precise and concise. Precise, just go straight to the point. What message are you trying to send? Be concise. No long thing, I gotta listen to you all day. Just asking you, how was your day? Well, it started when I stepped out, I opened the door and I went here. Just tell me, go straight to the point. Okay? All right? Okay. You also have to be an effective communicator, you have to prepare, ahead of time. You have to be able to know the message, encode your message very well to your specific audience. If I'm speaking to a group of economists, to a group of CEOs, right, there are certain words that I want to use, right? And then also the people who are listening, they have to be what? Active listeners and what? Empathetic listeners. So you also have that responsibility to give your rapt attention and to participate in the communication process. You also have to use good body language, all right, and facial expression. You don't go out there looking like so angry. You just do this. Hey, so I'm talking to you, and come on. Um, you you're gonna turn people off, all right. Um, if you're communicating and you want people to really like what you say, sometimes you have to present yourself as what that the message is very urgent. So you just go on. You have to be more active in your presentation too. In your talking, if you are so slow and act like what you're saying doesn't matter, then people are not going to take you serious, right? It doesn't matter. So these are some of the things that you do to do what to improve your communication. All right. So that brings an end to our discussion for today. How many minutes we got? 46. All right, we are done here. Let me see one more thing that I think I have to. All right, with improving communication, you also have to create a positive organizational culture where people don't become bystanders, and where there is no organizational silence. All right, so but yep. All right, and then what you also have to watch your tone, right? You also have to watch your tone when you are communicating. You have to watch your pitch too, the volume, right? When people are right around you, you don't go screaming and yelling. There's time to lift your voice up a little bit when you see that people are getting slower or the communication is getting so long, right? All right, so this is it. Final. Be prepared. Prepare for your what we call it presentation, and and I hope you guys all pass your exam and do well with your presentation. And I'll see you next time. All right. Bye bye.